Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Today, I want to talk about the situation in Ferguson and just police brutality in general. As many of you may know, yesterday, Darren Warren, the police officer who killed Michael Brown, testified before a grand jury for 4 hours. His testimony is closed to the public, so we don't know exactly what he said on the stand. But I was watching CNN yesterday, and they were talking about his testimony, and they were talking about how unusual it is for a defendant to testify before a grand jury. And they talked about a couple of possibilities. They mentioned that perhaps the defendant feels comfortable in that environment. Perhaps he thinks that he can convince the jury, just based on his statements, not to convict him, not to indict him, rather. Another possibility that Sonny Hostin brought up was the idea that perhaps he feels comfortable with the prosecution. And that point is a very valid point. And it's a point that many people have expressed concern about. They expressed concern about this prosecutor being in charge of the case because they are concerned that he is pro-police, that they're concerned about the fact that he hasn't prosecuted any police officers. They're concerned about his lack of sensitivity when it comes to racial issues. And those are legitimate concerns. They are very legitimate. And frankly, I think it's time for the people to take action. And many of the people have taken action. Beyond the rebellions that we saw a couple of weeks ago, people are still taking action. They went before the city council and expressed their outrage about the situation there. There were also demonstrations where people blocked the traffic on a few occasions for brief periods of time. And we need more acts of civil disobedience like that. We need soldiers. We don't need any more speeches. We don't need any more lectures. We don't need any more poems or blogs or articles. We need action. And we need strong action. We don't need any choreographed, benevolent, obedient, passive little demonstrations. The kind where the man gives you a permit to demonstrate in a certain area for a certain period of time, later for that. We need real demonstrations. We need real protests. We need real action. And we have a modern day example of that kind of action in a group called the Dream Defenders. That group occupied the governor's mansion or office. Actually, it was the governor's office. They occupied his office for weeks, demanding change. They demanded that certain acts take place. They demanded an end to the stand your ground laws in Florida. And they stood strong for quite some time. Well, what we need in Ferguson is a takeover, an occupation of the mayor's office, of the governor's office. And we need these occupations to last until a special prosecutor is appointed. And let me go back to why a special prosecutor needs to be appointed. I mean, basically because you have a prosecutor who's pro-police, you have a prosecutor who is insensitive when it comes to African Americans and black people in general. And there's a real fear that this prosecutor doesn't have the interests of the people at heart. Here we have a stinking cop who killed a young black boy, a young black man, killed him, shot him dead in the street like a dog. How many witnesses must come forward before action is taken? You've had witness after witness testify that this man, or state that this man had his hands up, that Michael Brown had his hands up when that police officer shot him down in the streets. You had people state that he was running from the officer. You had people state that when he was shot, he was approximately 35 feet away from the officer. He didn't pose a threat to the officer. It's uncontested that he was unarmed. How many witnesses must come forward before this man is arrested and charged for his crime? This makes no sense at all. This matter didn't have to go before a grand jury. They could have indicted him without a grand jury. They could have brought charges against him without a grand jury. It's time for action, and we need soldiers. Sustained action, not only in Ferguson, but around this country. Because every other day a black man is killed by these stinking cops. Every other day. And I just read a story about another brother killed in Georgia. I think it was Savannah. And so far they don't have all the details, but it appears to be another situation similar to what happened to Michael Brown. We need to stand up. We need soldiers. The Panthers were soldiers. Where are our soldiers today? Who is standing up for black people? Who's speaking out without fear? Without having to worry about placating and appeasing funders and handlers and corporations. Who's speaking out? We need soldiers to stand up and take charge of this thing. We need the youth to be at the forefront of this struggle. The students have always been the vanguard of the struggle, and they need to take leadership today. We don't need any more people telling us to pray about something, to relax, to settle down. We don't need containment. We don't need someone controlling the movement. It's time for action.